Teammates, we are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the #1 show on innovative teamwork. Great to have you. Thank whoever brought you here. To my regular listeners, it's become the expectation now. You know how we get down here. We bring nothing but the best. We bring people who have been put on this earth simply to help you, provide you with some gems by just looking at their own lives, by the way they live their own lives. They live their lives in a way that's modeling or projecting a way that you can use so you can do better things for yourself. So today we are about to get a master's class on personal branding from Mr. Isaac Mashman, who, it does. I mean, I would try to read off your entire resume, but you got everything from author to speaker to business owner. But most importantly, though, loves him some coffee. So with all that being said, Mr. Isaac Mashman, welcome to the show, man.
Salud, Aswan. Thank you so much for the invitation, man. Excited to have the conversation and have a beautiful, fresh cup of Cafe Bustelo. So I'm going to be fired up on that Cubano ground, baby.
Yes. Now, is this like a deal, like an actual partnership that you have, or is it just a matter of you love the coffee from the heart and you just got to roll?
I just love it from the heart. But
Yeah.
I've bounced back and forth doing my own coffee brand. But
Yeah.
man, whenever you're launching a business, you got to be all in. You gotta
Yeah.
actually take it serious. So maybe I should try to get a sponsorship though.
Mhm.
Maybe get something that would keep me on my toes. That'd be good.
Yeah, we've had a previous guest own the coffee shop at one point, and just that in itself, because it's not, you're obviously like Starbucks, you're not just selling coffee at that point and getting people in, so he had to do away with it and all that. But yeah,
Mhm.
coffee is definitely something that brings people together. So, with that being said, though, I do want to get into your background a little bit because you were born in Jacksonville, Florida, and at some point you give credit to the network marketing world for giving you this mindset. And I've been part of quite a few network
Mhm.
marketing companies, and I know the resistance that comes with it. I know the rejection that comes with it. I know people, you're doing that salesy thing and all that. So I'm curious as to what the company was, and then what are sort of the lessons that it taught you that made it so now you were able to grow and build your own company.
And it's really interesting because sometimes when you ask somebody what network marketing company they were in, they'll like run the opposite direction and they will dance around that question. My very first company was iMarkets Live and eventually rebranded to I Am Mastery Academy. Now,
Mhm.
there's been plenty of criticism over the past 6 years of that, of Forex trading and that sort of thing. But when I got involved with the industry, I was looking for mentorship. I was looking, and I was subconsciously looking for mentors. It wasn't something that I was actively seeking. But when I was in high school and I saw these young kids that were a little bit older than me, man, making
Yeah.
thousands of dollars a month, and as they said, residually, even though you and I both know
Right.
there's no such thing as true residual income,
I'm
it was
glad you
really
said
appealing
that
to me.
because there's a lot of people who use that. I was big in Amway and ID Life. Well, ID Life I still sort of do, but there's a ton of them I've been a part of. What's the other one? Herbalife. That's it. Herbalife. There's a ton
Yep.
of them, and they're gonna use that term residual income. So just for you, again, we're giving you lessons early here. That term residual income is all complete bullshit. Eventually you're gonna have to treat it like a job and stuff like that. So go ahead. Thank you for pointing that out early today.
Well, I think it's important, and it's important to distinguish actually what is true residual income. It's like mailbox money with like renting properties. Unless something is 100% hands off, it's not truly residual. Now, you can do things that improve the likelihood that it is residual. So, for example, every couple of months when I get a check from like Grant Cardone for throwing in $1,000 in Cardone Capital a couple of years ago, all right,
Mhm.
I'm not doing anything. That would be residual, but it's
Hands
100%
off.
hands
Right.
off
Yes.
in comparison to building a business. And the thing that people get wrong with network marketing, and that I got wrong because I didn't make a lot of money in MLMs. That
Right.
wasn't it. But I had the greatest experience by being in the industry, and I learned sales, I learned mentorship, I learned how to press people for their pain points. I remember
Yeah.
having dinner with Alex Morton, and he's somebody I still consider a mentor, even though I'm not in his business. And
Mhm.
I've actually considered, man, just paying the $30 a month and being an IBO just to get access.
Yeah.
But he told me at dinner one time, I was like, what should I know in terms of sales? And he's like, you need to understand why they're doing something. You
Mhm.
need to really press in and ask, are you trying to retire mom and dad? That's the cliche everybody uses. Or is there a certain thing that you care about? And I adopted that as one and applied it to my current business, so whenever I'm working with somebody and I'm asking them, how are you building your personal brand? I start with, why are you building your personal brand?
Mhm.
And I go into do you want to make money? Do you want to be mission focused? Do you want to do it for vanity?
Mhm.
And with those things in mind, I'm able to move in the direction that can get them that kind of result. And it also helps create clarity for them,
Right.
understanding that, okay, if my focus is to become famous, I'm not going to be focusing on monetization as so much as I'm trying to focus on how can I make it pay for itself so I can keep getting fame?
Right.
Or how can I, if your focus is making money, how can I monetize intellectual property? How can I monetize a podcast or a book,
Mhm.
etc.?
Right.
And so those tidbits, man, I am 100% certain that if I did not get involved with network marketing, I would not have gone down this path.
Right.
And that I would have probably been lost and been a complete loser
Mhm.
because I decided not to do college for
Yeah,
this
actually,
entire
you
game
beat
of
me to it.
business.
That was gonna actually, I was gonna actually ask you that. So I'm glad you brought that up because we're kind of pulled in a direction. It's natural, the school system, and we're conditioned to again go to high school, go to college, and you get looked at like a success. You obviously took a completely different route. Was there something that happened in your like for me personally? I watched my dad run his own company since before I got to high school. And even though I was playing football, football was the only reason I actually went to college and the only thing. But I saw my dad do his own thing. So eventually I wanted to run my, I thought that would just look like the norm. Was there something that was happening kind of throughout those high school years that said, this college thing ain't really, I ain't really feeling that. I'm gonna go do some something where I can go and sell.
Quite the opposite, actually. My mom, I mean, it was a single parent household,
Mhm.
growing up. I don't know if this is on video, but my cat is making an appearance.
I
Kylie,
love the
just
cat and it's not been edited out either. So I love that part about it actually.
he's over here asking for food, right? And
Yes.
me too. But going into my schooling career, man, coming from a single parent household, I didn't have a relationship with my biological father until much later when I was already an adult.
Oh,
My
yeah.
mom, brilliant woman, she worked lower paying jobs pretty much my entire life, and she was overqualified for every single one of them.
Oh,
So I was raised with the go to school and get the education so you can get the full ride, just like
oh,
my mom did.
oh.
And so it was I wanted to get a full ride scholarship, and I graduated top 10 in my class, man. Like I
Really?
graduated with honors with the National Honor Society. I had advanced placement credits of 4.44 weighted
Okay.
GPA. Like it was
Oh,
not something that was a light decision saying, no,
yeah.
I'm not going to go to college, even though I've just spent 12 years of my life working for it.
Yeah,
And
that
that was
must
a
have been a
radical
lot of
shift.
resistance. Yeah.
It
I
took
can,
me basically telling everybody, screw you, and I went and did it anyway. And that
wow.
put a lot of strain on a lot of relationships, man. I lost relationships with people that were close to me because I basically retracted and was committed. And in retrospect, I wouldn't do it differently, but I
Hmm.
would have went and maybe resumed some of those relationships with a little bit more grace
Hmm.
and maybe would have been a little bit more respectful of how I approached it. But I think that if you need to do that in order to take a leap of faith and to cut everybody off, go do it and then rebuild it and that's ballsy to say, and that's a heavy piece of advice.
What would you say was the pull though? Because it would seem that you again, you and I are completely I finished high school with a 2.2 grade point average and I
Yeah.
couldn't stand the school at all. Like I was like, if it wasn't football, I'm not looking at it, I'm not interested. But school must have been a place where you actually got acceptance because you were doing so well. And then boom, monkey wrench. Was there something you saw on TV? Was there this a way of maybe you wanted to help mom? So I'd love for you to kind of elaborate on that.
Well, during that time, I was in a strained relationship with my mom and my stepdad. It was just butting heads nonstop. And so I basically was looking for every single option for rebellion. And
Mm,
that was my main focus point. It's like if you're telling me to go left, I'm going right. You tell me to sit, I'm standing. You tell me to stand, I'm sitting.
mhm.
And that mentality is something I've adopted today because I always operate best when I have a crutch. When I have, and I've tried, and we could have a conversation about how can you build with dark energy versus it's kind of like Star Wars and you have the Force and you have like the Sith and you have the Jedi. And I've
Yeah.
always operated better underneath the Sith, right? If we're talking nerd speak, right?
Hmm.
But I absolutely faced that resistance, and I saw my mom getting a master's degree, and she never applied it. And I say this out of respect for her, but she didn't get a higher paying job after she got her master's degree. So I'm
Yeah.
thinking, you want me to go to college? I'm going to spend 2 years of my life taking biology and taking chemistry and
Yeah.
taking all these dumb prereqs,
Exactly.
and then I can get into marketing 2 years later. And so it's like if you were to compare what I know today in public relations, for example,
Yeah.
with any public relations major, I will run circles and stomp on them because
Right.
I was able to get that real world experience and real world study.
Yes.
And
Yes.
yeah, man, it was definitely a risk, but I don't have any regret. But it does remind me that, hey, you lazy MF, you need to go do this,
You're allowed to
because
curse on here
you
too, by the
literally,
way, if you
you,
want.
what was that?
I say you're allowed to curse on here if you want to, if you gotta get off. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, again, man, it's just one of those situations where you went all in, you kind of burnt the boats, burnt the ships.
Yeah.
Again, a network marketing, analogy there that a lot of people
Yeah.
use. So I might as well go and run with it.
Yeah, so for the listeners, there's a lot you have got to extract from everything he said because I love the way Kanye put it. I believe I can't think of this. All Falls Down, College Dropout was his first album. He says the concept of school seems so secure. Sophomore, 3 years, ain't picked a career. She's like, fuck it, I'm gonna stay down here and do hair. All right, all of that shit is like wrapped up into that story to where, again, I'm not telling you not to go to college, and I'm telling you, you got to know exactly what it is you want to do if you are going to pay that tuition. Because I've been to every type of school you can possibly imagine. My first 3 years, I was on 3 different campuses, and it's the same story over and over. They give you a bunch of majors, they gaslight you, they'll nickel and dime you to death. And by the time you're done with it, you're so covered in student loans where you're so desperate looking for a job. Now, then maybe you'd be lucky to get those student loans paid off based on whatever job you're paying, whatever job you're looking at. And then there's the Isaacs of the world that spent those 4 years, maybe even, and you could even you could even have maybe went to school part-time, maybe did a class here and there that was related to business, but you were focused on actually getting real world experiences, people that were selling millions. I think you already mentioned Grant Cardone. These are people that's giving him gems and they're making money. They're looking at you on college campuses and they're like, I would run circles around here. It's like you would not even have an opportunity because I've spent my years actually getting that experience. Do not fall for that. I'm praying for. I was there because I was all up into the college football world, and I've seen it happen time and time again. And with the advent of social media and everything that's going on, I can only imagine it's getting worse and worse because we're shrinking. I'm in West Palm Beach, Florida. He's in Arkansas, and we're able to have a conversation. So imagine what going on with social media. So with all that now, when you did you like kind of fizzle out from that network marketing company and then just kind of bounce? Like, how did you get to the point where you felt qualified enough to do personal branding for public figures and take on that type of a challenge? Because I'm sure they have things that they want to be doing that's very catered and tailored to them. And now you as Isaac got
Yeah,
to be the person to say, okay, are you happy? You're not happy? How'd you get into that
man.
world?
That's an excellent question. If I could go back to the previous and really
Yeah,
quick
go ahead.
presidential debate style, when I was trying to, figure out my path and everything, I knew that by going to college, it would complicate my, expertise. And something that I suppose a better way of explaining this would be the issue with people today is we overthink everything. We complicate it. And when you were to compare like my practical knowledge compared to somebody else who is a college student, let's even just take how do you formulate a social media post for a company, right? They would be thinking about split testing, A B. They would be thinking about, okay, let's spend 2 hours studying and finding a good hashtag and finding all these different things, or having some super strategic approach to doing something to where it just takes so much more time versus the quick execution that is also strategic. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's like you should know what you're doing and to study what works and what doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
But compared to a college student, they're more reserved because you go to school and that reservation is created in you because you only focus on the risks rather than the potential great outcomes of, okay, you might, have to make a couple pivots or you might adjust things. The post might not be perfect, but would it be better to get that post out there versus to obsess over perfection?
Yeah,
And there's a balance there. And I do believe that college is good for people who want to be engineers, doctors, lawyers,
exactly.
people that require that heavy degree of schooling. But why would you go for a social media degree or a public relations degree? Or it's like, I had a conversation with somebody a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about how he's being the voice of the brand and how all these things. And I'm thinking to myself, why don't you just get the founder to go on a news network and talk about the brand rather than just thinking about all of these other things,
Yeah.
such as does this sound properly? Well,
Right.
Have the founder go out and be the representation of the business, and then you obviously take what the founder represents and you build a culture based off of that, so the business operates by itself. And yeah, I could
So
go off of
to
on
that
so
point,
many tangents
though,
there.
a lot of people got to understand that everything in life has trade-offs. All right. There's no
Yeah.
perfect situation. So the trade-off with social media, the trade-off with how the idea that you have or may have 1,000 friends on Facebook is now people are starving for face-to-face dialogue. They're
Mhm.
starving for a person to just have a conversation with them, even if it's just Zoom. They're starving for actual real dialogue. So when you only focus on the risks in your post and you try to make it perfect, people are going to spot that miles amount. They're going to feel the fakeness on your posts and all the stuff you're doing because they know that you don't really live it. So what they actually, and I talked about this in my first book, what they actually need is, hey, I'm just a real person right now. I'm fucked up and I want to see it on social media. It's not something, I'm not going through a good situation right now. I'm not happy. And that's something that a founder, CEO company, a person who puts his heart and soul into the company, that's only the founder can do that. Now, if you're just working for a check, if you're just getting the money off it, you're afraid of what you're going to say. You're afraid if you say it, you're going to get fired. Like I say that all the time. As much as I like listening to Stephen A. Smith, he works for Disney. Okay, you throw on a podcast like an All the Smoke or one of the podcasts that aren't ESPN, you're going to get the way it really is in the locker room. If you go listen to him on First Take versus go listening to him on his own platform and podcast, it's like two completely different dudes. All right, because the world needs the real conversation. That's what's open up. That's the trade-off. Okay. So social media, you will not be perfect. All right. Don't go into it thinking, okay, I'm going to make the perfect post every single time. Nobody wants that anyway, and it's just not going to be true.
Well, and an easy strategy, and I'll go back to the network
Yeah.
marketing question I haven't forgotten,
Yeah.
because I actually haven't really had an opportunity to talk about this in depth really
Yeah.
on any show. I can't think of off the top of my head over the
You're on the
past
Move
couple of
Swiftly
years, man. So
podcast, brother.
yeah, this is wonderful. I love it. But you think back to, people trying to think about what content they're creating online, and they think about, oh, let me only talk about my profession, or only talk about, there's this struggle to find balance between showcasing the person and showcasing the professional,
Yeah.
right? And I actually saw somebody the other day, and it was a recent connection that I made because he commented on one of my political posts, ironically. And
Okay.
so we automatically had a mutual ground of hey, we both believe that this bullet shouldn't have moved 1 inch to the right. So we have mutual understanding and mutual connection there. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, I went and looked at all of his socials, and I was like, "What's going on, Joe?" And he says, "Man, none of my posts have ever surpassed 1,000 views. Like none of my videos." And he's put videos out on YouTube, on Facebook, on TikTok, all of
It's
that.
good. I'm
I
the
go to his
same.
page
Yeah.
and I look at it, and I'm thinking, all of these things are talking about virtual assistants and outsourcing and emails and business and social media and all this stuff. And I'm thinking, who the hell are you? I don't know. And I'm
Uh,
thinking to myself off the top of my head, man, I know 3 or 4 other people who have outsourcing VA businesses or that could also do something in a
yeah.
similar fashion to what you got going on, man. If
Wow.
I'm choosing who I'm going to work with, man, I'm going to go with Nathan Hirsch, or I'm going to go with Dennis Yu, or I'm going to go with, a X, Y, and Z professional, because I know who they are. I know
They
that
are.
they're
Yeah.
a father or a traveler or a
Yeah.
speaker or somebody who out scammers. Like, I know them. And I
Yeah.
told him, I was like, man, you need to record a video, just 40 seconds or less, and just say,
Mm-hmm.
hey, my name's Joe. This is what I got going on. I'd
Mm-hmm.
love to connect and start building that personal side. And I have developed a strategy called the skyline strategy, right?
Yeah.
Every big city has a skyline with skyscrapers.
Mm-hmm.
So your content that you're producing online, you're effectively building out your skyline. So for
Mm-hmm.
every 2 business posts you make that would move your business, your profession, your credibility, your authority forward or vertical,
Right.
you do one personal post that showcases, for example,
Yes.
I don't drink tea at my office. You get coffee. I made a post today. It's a
Yes.
personal post. It
Mm-hmm.
showcases the person. Or it could be me going out to dinner, or me sharing a story about why coffee is important. I don't mean 100% like coffee is not my personality,
Right.
but I showcase other starts and other aspects. Just single parent household, didn't
Yes.
have a good relationship with my parents. I
Mm-hmm.
hated my last name. I, was in Boy Scouts. All of these things
Mm-hmm.
establish rapport and establish trust.
Yes.
Now, if you would like, I could go back to the conversation about why I decided to eventually get out of MLM, man. I
Mm-hmm.
know that we got on a little tangent, but I just found like those things are so important because
Yeah.
everybody's complicating the social media game and the internet game and their personal brand.
But before you know that, I think it's important too that just share a little bit about the feedback you get when you do these things, because I can imagine there's some listeners in that may say, oh my, that may take some courage. Yeah, that may
Yeah.
actually take some bravery to put myself out there and talk about the relationship or a strained relationship that I may have with my ex, or a strained relationship I have with a
Mm.
parent, the things I personally struggle with. And can you kind of speak on how the benefits that it actually gave you when you decided to show up as your authentic self?
Well, number one, I wouldn't say we need to really stop using the term authentic self, because if you're thinking about being authentic, you're thinking in your mind, you're inherently manipulating what you're doing and what you're saying.
Hmm.
You're subconsciously doing that. So don't focus on being authentic, just focus on being you.
Okay.
Drop the word authentic. But being vulnerable or sharing stories, there's a difference between having the victim on social media,
I'm just saying, yeah,
persona.
vulnerable is probably a better word than authentic now that I'm thinking about
Yeah.
it.
But by being vulnerable and showcasing you,
Hmm.
you're connecting with people on a personal level. And
Hmm.
people do business with who they know, like, and
Trust.
exactly,
Hmm.
right? That's cliche. I've brought it up on every podcast interview I've been on in the past week
Exactly.
because it's so important to talk about. Because I
Common.
would rather work with the person I consider a brother personally, or the person who I know I can rely on, that has good morals, that has good ethics, or might have a similar religious standing. I'd rather do business with somebody like that. And
Hmm.
so, talking about whether it's a political belief, whether it's a struggle, whether it's something like, not knowing what I was doing or how scary it was to pivot from business to business, or, even going and talking about getting into shape, these give openings for rapport. And what is rapport? Rapport is trust.
Hmm.
And so if you can develop trust with somebody digitally, and there comes a point, as one, where people will know you and you will not know them. And
Hmm.
that's when you move into the space of a public figure, to where Grant
Yes.
Cardone doesn't know I exist. Even though he signs my check, when he sends it out to me, he doesn't know who I am. Now, if I
That
put in $100,000 or a
is.
million, he'd probably know who I am, right?
Hmm.
There are people who follow me on Facebook or follow me across socials. I don't know who they are. They're following me, and they hit me up and they say, "Hey, Isaac, I'd love to work with you."
Hmm.
And they've been following me for a few years. There's a lower objection and there's a lower action threshold for them to take, right? So
Yes.
there's trust. And by
Yes.
being vulnerable, you're building long-term relationships. So even though I went from network marketing to the music industry
Hmm.
to launching a public relations firm and doing podcast management even for a period of time, to now launching my consulting firm in 2024, when I thought my PR firm was like the final end all be all,
Okay.
I've had people that are still sticking around from day one because they're connected with Isaac Mashman
Hmm.
for me,
Right.
not just what I'm professionally doing.
Okay, so I'm glad you brought that up too, because that's actually where I was going to go. So you go from marketing and then you get into the music industry. And what year was this around?
2019 going into 2020.
2019. All right. So CDs are long gone at this point,
Yep.
having CDs and, the way they used to make money and stuff like that. What do you tell an aspiring musician in terms of how to create revenue streams? Because, and I'm asking because this is something that can travel. It doesn't have to just be a musician, but whenever your industry is taking a hit and the physical products no more are no longer sold, now everything, absolutely everything is digital, and they can get it free digitally, which means you have to get very creative in how you market yourself to the point where you have to actually really build fans. And I'll just even put this example out there. Just last year, I went to a 50 Cent concert because his CD came out when I was in middle school. And I mean, like, the people that were there knew the CD, they knew that fan base, but everybody can't sell out. And that's really where a lot of musicians make their money. So walk us through about, like, some of the ups and downs in that industry.
Well, man, part of the reason why I decided to get out of music was because I knew that there wasn't a way for me as a manager or as somebody who wanted to launch a record label. I was going to call it Excess Records. I have the domain, I have the socials, I have all of that. And it was like EXXCESS. So Records. Man, in the future, I might even sell it off or do something with it. I don't know. But
Right.
the thing is, I came to the realization that the only way that I, as the manager, not as the talent, would be able to do this would be if we were to go to a very high level. We were to take it to scale. And for
Yes.
musicians, if you're thinking about the music that you're doing, you need to, number one, go wide, be on Tidal, be on Spotify, be on Apple, be on Amazon, be on YouTube, etc. It's pretty much commonplace. You can distribute your music using DistroKid or any of the tune places. I'm trying to think of the ones off the top of my head. TuneCore, I think, is the one that I'm thinking about that Rust use. Russ has actually published like screenshots of like how much money he's made over like 2015 compared to 2020 something. And man,
Mm,
it's crazy to see $100 to $100,000, right? But
exactly.
again, how is Russ successful? It is at scale. And the other thing is when you're signing a record deal, you get paid the advance, but you have to pay that advance back through your
Exactly.
records,
Yep.
through your sales. And this is high level shit that people don't talk about because
Exactly.
it sucks and it's not sexy and it's
Yeah.
business. But most artists go into the music business
Mhm.
as entertainers, not as business people. And
Yeah.
that is, man. And so you can think about signing a deal, but understand that you need to make sure that you own your masters, right? You get your royalties at a reasonable rate. And that if you're having to repay the advance, that there isn't some stipulation where if it's not repaid, they
Mhm.
resume all ownership. Because think about these stipulations in a contract, man. If you don't pay back that royalty in a certain period of time, they could have a stipulation in the contract that says if not repaid, we will resume 100% ownership of a master's.
Mhm.
That means that you're
Yep.
working for free and that your art is no longer your art. Crazy thought.
Exactly.
Now, most artists, how do they get money? They don't get money through streaming or even the record deal in so much as touring.
Mhm.
Now, if you're touring, you get paid by ticket sales. So after the cost of paying everybody and doing the venues and stuff, you would get your chunk of money coming from merchandise and that, unless you get into a 360 deal.
Mhm.
Now, what is a 360 deal? That basically means that the record label or your manager gets paid a chunk of everything you make off of album sales digitally, off of album sales physically, off of vinyls, off of merchandise, off of streaming, off of social media content. You have no control. You get paid, you basically are sharing a piece of your pie everywhere. And then you think about paying your manager on top of the record label, on top of your social media team, on top of everything. You're basically working for free.
Or you're gonna owe
Now,
money at the end
I
of
don't
the
know
day.
about you, man, but
Add all that stuff up.
I don't want to work for free.
Right.
I don't want to work for free. I'll be
Right.
honest, right? Now, if you're starting out, though, go into it with the mindset of the public figure. And this is what I would tell all of my clients. Anybody who wants to build out their personal brand or have any level of success, you have to develop this mindset of, I am going to be in the public's eye.
Mhm.
I have to be a public figure that people can follow, trust, like, be entertained by, be educated by, be connected to, or motivate these people. You
Mhm.
have to be in front. And that takes balls, man. You have to put yourself up there for criticism. So I made a post the other day, and I think this is relevant to mention because when you're creating your social media following, you're developing a culture without realizing it. The
Yeah.
people who are following you and interacting and commenting are building a culture around your personal brand, just
Mhm.
like a business has its own culture. And so when I made one particular post on Facebook and I said, "Man, I've been quoted in Forbes, I've been quoted in Entrepreneur, I've been flown out by Facebook to VidCon, all that." On Facebook, I had a great reception. Everybody's like, "Man, awesome." I posted on Threads, and it's crabs in the bucket. People are like, "Who is this guy? Do you know
Yeah.
this guy? Who is this guy?" And I'm
Yeah.
thinking to myself, man, I could help every single one of you, and your domain's available. You don't know it. You're
Mhm.
going to be the same shitty comedian that's working in your club 10 years from now,
Right.
and I'll be the one who owns your club. Like I'm thinking to myself, there's an entire disparity there. And so if you're going into the music industry, if you're going
Mhm.
into comedy or building a business, put yourself out there for public criticism, be that public figure, have an omnipresent brand, get the same social media handle, own your domain, and own your masters.
Mhm.
And whether that's podcast, a course, or music, own your masters.
Yes, that's solid advice there. Really important aspect of it because actually there was previous guests who who I think he currently still works for Live Nation, and he was actually
Mm.
telling me, when they put on shows, his mindset is all about does this commercial play at this time and making sure the lighting is right, making sure there's so many things to actually just put on a decent show as well that go with that. First of all, you got to get the audience and things like that. So you mentioned the public figure aspect to it, and I got to tell you, how real do you get with some people? Because there was a comedy show that I went to, and these dudes like they were absolutely terrible. Like they were wasting time. I as a fan and somebody that was there just eating wanted to tell them, please just don't give up your day job. This was absolutely pathetic. But there were still
Jeez.
people who were quote unquote the managers saying, yeah, man, they knew they're gonna be good. Like at what point because you as the manager, now you got to start thinking about your reputation. If someone comes to you and they say, look, I want to be a quote unquote public figure, comedian, musician, poet, whatever it is, where do you start to, look at morals in your business? All right, look, man, look, this isn't going to be for you. Go find it. Like, is there any of those interactions when it comes to, because I know you built it into something that's like a consulting group now.
Yeah, well, there are levels to this, man,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I can guarantee that those people at that club, you don't remember their names.
No,
So even though
I
they
couldn't think
fucked
of.
up,
Yeah.
even though they screwed up and you didn't really like what they had going on,
Yeah.
you don't remember them. So what was the risk? They could have been starting out and been the first. That might have been their first night, and you would have never known. And
Ah,
so now,
think about
so
it like
Joe
that.
Rogan, for example, or Roseanne O'Donnell, I was listening to an interview with her on Jordan Peterson, I
Oh,
believe.
yeah,
Just
that's about
curious. I'm like, I'm not a huge fan of her, but she was saying that like when you're a comedian, you go to these small places and you test your material and see what works and what doesn't work.
Right.
And it's like it's a lot of comedy clubs have their phones in the bags to where you can't use your phone, so you can't record the material. So guess what? There's very little risk.
Yeah.
So, and it's not like somebody's going to leave and be like, "Oh man, she told such a horrible joke." No, as if you can land one good joke, you're good. And
Right.
so,
Huh. Yeah, you just
remind me
taught
of the
me something.
question. I got on
Yeah.
that little tangent,
Yeah.
brother. But
No, I was just asking you, how do you approach that conversation when people, well, they see you, they see the brands you work with, they know
yeah.
your resume, and they come to you and say, look, I want to do this, Isaac, I want to be good. Like, is there a scouting element? Is there a vetting out process that you have for people that say they want to be public figures and things like that?
Well, you have to have a degree of natural talent or the ability to get there. And there has been moments over the past like couple of weeks where I've turned people away and been like, and this is where having multiple facets of a business can be important because if I don't want to work with you personally, I might have a program that we're launching the Unrivaled MCG training platform, which will have these courses that these people can use, and we're not a course company, we're a consulting group. There's a big difference there. I'm building
Yeah.
a consultants team with legitimate strategies, with a legitimate business model, with a physical location. It's like that. I wanted to make sure that I have all of my P's and Q's to where you can Google me. There's no dispute that I know what the hell I'm talking about.
Right.
And that right there indicates that, okay, again, if how many gurus do you see in front of rented Lamborghinis, man, having a program and a course, and you can't verify their business? That's a problem. And so if somebody was to come to me and be like, man, I want to just be well known locally in my city, I could
Mm-hmm.
work with that person. I could be like, all right, well, let's get you on local comedy clubs or local television or local radio. Let's get you into some of the, nightlife. Now, I probably wouldn't really prefer to work with that person. I
Mm-hmm.
would rather work with the national icon, right? The national celebrity versus the local hero. And
Mm-hmm.
the local being the local hero is great. Like there's literally like the local hero of everybody knows you.
Yeah.
Then you go from thinking about a rapper like Young Dolph or Yo Gotti starting out in Memphis, Tennessee, to
Mm-hmm.
developing into this national icon, right? Or this international superstar.
Right.
And there are levels to understanding how big do you need to take it. So you might go on local podcasts if you want to be well known locally,
Mm-hmm.
but you would go on a podcast like, for example, I'm not living in Florida anymore, but I'm on your show
Mm-hmm.
because I'm working to be national and international. So I'm
Right.
going to be planting seeds everywhere else. So now you can have a conversation with somebody face to face, maybe a prospect tomorrow, and you'd be like, man, I just had a conversation with somebody based out of Little Rock. His name is Isaac, and he focuses on personal branding. Let's have a conversation. So
Right.
now there's another seed planted in West Palm Beach.
Yes.
And so understanding your ambitions, your goals, and why you're doing it leads into the strategic side to where now we can reverse engineer your goals and what you're trying to do and what action steps we can take to get there.
Yeah, so in other words, listeners, you got to think big. You cannot think small. You cannot be that person that, like you just said, wants to just be local because that's just not it's like an oxymoron. You can't get into this public figure game and just say, oh, I'm only gonna be a little bit like there's no control. You got to think big. You got to believe in your message, believe in your craft, believe in everything you're about. You got to believe in it to the point where you feel like the world should know about where you're ready for whatever comes with it. That's just the game. That's just the game you're in.
Yep.
If you're really about it, and that's really the 100% honest, my only the honest piece of advice I give you. If you're really about it, then you have to really be willing to take the hits. And again, there's going to be criticism. There's going to be a ton of public criticism that you're going to take. And that leads me to the next talking point with you is like, how do you coach people through the negative press? One of the things that I remember LeBron James, I believe it was his high school coach, Drew Joyce, back when he was in St. Vincent, St. Mary. Oh my God, the world loves LeBron. He looked him in his face. He goes, are you ready for the negative press? Are you ready?
Mhm.
Because it's coming. It's coming. How do you, like, whether you deal with the negative press yourself or you're talking to a client and you say to them, look, the negative press is coming. How exactly do you manage that situation and kind of coach people through that?
Well, I can't say that all press is good press. There's that phrase. It's like all press is good press, and that's not necessarily true because if somebody was to write a hit piece on you, right, and say like, "Oh, this guy's a scam artist," or "This guy's this," or "I had a
Mhm.
bad experience," it's like you could have one negative review, and you don't know what person is reading that review and choosing not to do business with you. And you could have 30 other positive reviews, but that doesn't matter because all that person is thinking about in their mind is that one star. And so every single interaction that is negative, you need to be addressing and you need to be, basically paying attention to.
Mhm.
If there are situations where you can get in front of them, you need to. But you also need to basically be so legitimate to where there's no reason for somebody to be negative about what you've got going on. But guess what? People are fickle, people are emotional, and people are a lot of times pathetic. And so if
Yeah,
somebody's taking the time to comment on your posts
yeah,
and be like, this guy sucks, or who is this guy, like all the people did on threads,
yeah,
guess what? If I was to Google them, I couldn't find them.
yeah,
If I was to look up their history, I don't know who they are. I don't know what they got going on, even
yeah,
though they might have great big ambitions. Now, I'm not saying this from a place of ego, but a place of what you give the universe, you're going to get back, right?
yeah.
And so if all these people are like, who is this guy? And not thinking, how can this guy help me? Or maybe I could learn something, or just scrolling past,
Hmm.
it's like, take it with a grain of salt. But
Yeah.
now all of those people, I'm going to remember Troy. I'm going to remember
Hmm.
Harmon. I'm going to remember all of these other people. I'm going to go through the post and be like, in the future, I'm going to remember you. And
Yeah.
using that dark energy for a good thing, man. The cat is like driving me nuts, man. I'm
Yeah.
sorry about that.
That
Um,
that actually brings me to the way I personally handle, like, so every day I do a video right after my run. I call it the daily move swiftly thought. And there was one time I've been doing this for what 3 or 4 years, every single day, no matter what. And there was a guy, because I just started putting out shorts. I just found the Opius clips and all that kind of stuff. So the shorts are coming out. There's like multiple posts a day. And there was this guy that commented. This was after I fell and my lip was all busted. I looked like shit on camera, but I still did it because I wanted people to know I'm authentic with it. This guy commented, and I remembered at that point that you made about those 1-star reviews. I remember he said, "Bro, stop making content. I'm tired of seeing your face on my screen." And actually, what it did is it dictated my next daily move swiftly thought, where I went on camera and said, okay, how to handle negative comments. And I said something very similar to what you said, is you should always be looking for some level of feedback. But if this dude sees full videos and you're only commenting on a short, that's not necessarily the type of person that you should let stop you. Now, if it's an honest critique to say, hey, you said some arms here, you're factually wrong about that. Okay, thank you. But if you're going to comment on a short 1 minute or 30 seconds short and think you know what a person's actually been through,
yes.
lived through, I mean, how can that actually hurt you? All right. So don't get into it. Understand the negative press are going to happen, but there's just a lot of shitheads out there. There's a lot of shitty people that are sitting back just watching you, and you would have no idea who they are and what they're all about. And that, just saying that, leads me into the next question I have here. I want to give you the opportunity to talk about your book. The book that you wrote and how it helps people, what it's all about, and what it actually inspired it. And then feel free to dive into that a little bit.
Absolutely. And my book is called Personal Branding and Manifesto on Fame and Influence. I have a first edition copy here. I'm working on the second edition. This is a short read, about 50 pages. The
Mm-hmm.
second edition is going to be over 200. And I wrote this in 2021 as the precursor for the philosophy of personal branding. So,
Okay.
like Napoleon Hill has his philosophy of success, he said that in his audios. You can actually find some of his audios on YouTube and SoundCloud. I've listened to many of them. He
Yep.
says that, this is the first practical philosophy of success. Well, I want to do the same thing with personal branding and explain the what and why, because as one, a lot of people have this misconception about their personal brands that it's only on social media or that it's only their Instagram, or every time they're creating a new website or pivoting, they're creating a new personal brand.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not. You're working with the same personal brand you've had from the moment you were born.
Yeah.
Kind of crazy to think about that.
Yes.
And you think about the historical figures from Martin Luther King to Martin Luther to
Mm-hmm.
King Tut to King James or Genghis Khan
Mm-hmm.
or any historical figure, Adam and Eve.
Right.
All of these people have had personal brands
Yeah.
and are remembered by something either for what they did or for who they were, or
Mm-hmm.
both. And so I wrote that book as a introductory kind of introduction to what your personal brand is and why you should build it. Because then having that reputation to where it's able to work for you and ultimately get to the point where opportunities are finding you when you're not seeking them out,
Mhm.
it means that now you have somebody who's working for you 24/7 effectively. Imagine if you had a virtual assistant sending out messages, a virtual assistant having conversations nonstop.
Yeah.
That is like your personal brand.
Now, just by you saying that though, because it makes me think of, because we're in the political season, I'm not going to ask you who you're voting for or anything like that or your political affiliations, but I am curious on how you as a person define what a celebrity is. Because as we're in the middle
Mhm.
of this Republican National Convention, I'm looking at people who are on stages, and at me as the aspiring speaker, I'm looking at how they got on these stages. I'm like, wait, ain't that the dude Charlie Kirk from YouTube that's going at it with college kids, and ain't that the
Yep.
the Byron Donald guy? Like people that built their brand on YouTube, and now they're speaking on stages. And in my head, I'm like, why are they being asked to speak and as one's not being asked to speak? So just out of I guess like a personal way, like how do you define a celebrity nowadays, or anybody that's trying to develop the quote unquote personal brand and get their message out there?
Not all public figures are celebrities, but all celebrities are public figures. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Now,
So you got to start that one down. Wow, that was a powerful one. Please
yeah,
start
not
again.
okay. Not all public figures are celebrities,
Yes.
but all celebrities are public figures. Okay.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Now
I'm gonna put
I'm
that on a
learning.
hoodie in
I'm
the
learning
future.
with y'all. This is a good one.
So the only reason celebrities exist is because of psychological biases. We view that celebrity as different than us. There's a psychological thing called the halo effect.
Hmm.
Now, what is the halo effect? This is where you base your entire perception on somebody based off of one trait. So you assume that if somebody is famous, they have money. If you assume somebody has money, they're well connected. If you assume somebody is fat, they're not disciplined.
Hmm.
Now that the second or the end phrase would be an example of the horn effect. It's where
Hmm.
you make a negative conclusion based off of one characteristic. Let's say you had a teacher in high school, man, who was bald, and you hated this teacher.
Hmm.
Now, anybody that you see bald that looks like him, you're going to automatically think, man, oh, that guy's probably a jerk,
Yeah.
right? Now, it might
Exactly.
be a simple example, but that's
Very
the same
true.
thing about celebrities. They exist because there is a psychological bias between us and between them, right? And then there's distance.
Hmm.
So you do not feel like you could go up to one of these speakers at the RNC tomorrow and immediately get their phone number.
Hmm.
There's distance between them and you. And what did I talk about earlier? A good indicator of a successful personal brand is people know you, but you do not know them.
Mm.
Now, this comes as a privilege,
Yeah.
and this comes as a opportunity. This comes as a gift.
Hmm.
And so what all these people did is they worked their way up into, got connected,
Hmm.
they put themselves into the spotlight, local press, television, radio, proper conversations. They went to the right dinners, they went to the right luncheons. There is a recipe for success if you want to go. And I
Right.
actually was thinking about a political career in Arkansas at one
Yeah.
point, and well, I might end up doing in the future.
It's possible.
I asked somebody, I was
I'm
like,
not
man,
opposed. I posted that yesterday. I've not ruled it out. Seeing what I'm seeing, because if these cats are doing it, there's no reason why As One can't get on there with my books and my plan. And the way I speak, I'm like, yeah, hell yeah.
but that's how the
I
political
right.
system was
Yeah.
intended. It was
Yeah.
intended for the common folk
Right.
to go and change policy. There was never any intention by the founding fathers to have some career politician. And I
Yeah.
think by now you could probably assume who I'm voting for. Just if you're in
Right.
business, you're pretty much swinging one way. I'm sorry, it's more difficult to close now. People don't have as much money to
Yeah.
spend.
Yeah.
Inflation's high. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Let's just be real, man. So
Right.
if you're thinking about these people that are on stage, I think about one. His name is Hung Chow. He's
Hmm.
an Asian dude running for a Republican office in the United States of America. And guess what? If I was in his district, man, I would vote for him. You know why? He came out onto the stage
Hmm.
and he did a bang and he said, that is what my parents heard when communism took over in Vietnam. I'm like,
Hmm.
damn, that's a hook. And then he goes in and talks about being a Navy SEAL and how he served the American people and
Yeah.
he served for 30 years and now he's serving the American people again. Man, that is a strong message, a strong personal brand, and a strong connection, a relationship.
Yeah.
And so celebrities exist because there is distance.
Yeah.
And so if you could do things
Hmm.
to create distance between you and common folk, I
Yeah.
say that with air quotes, then you start being perceived as a strong, credible person. So when I go out to speak in Denver, Colorado later this year at a conference in front of 120 people, which is a small event, but it's a high level event,
Right.
there's going to be a level of distance between me and the person in attendance because I am the one creating versus the one consuming.
Yes.
On
Yes.
social media, are you the one consuming 24/7 or are you the one creating? And other people are consuming.
Thank you.
It's not that difficult. We make it more difficult than it actually is. And so you think about where I started 5 years ago. I've gotten to where I'm at from a public perspective in
Mhm.
less than a decade.
Yeah.
To where now, if you were to run a Google search, man, I dominate search. I dominate Google. I've had opportunities. I get pitched every single day.
Mhm.
And that was done on purpose and done because I knew that I do this. This will improve the perception. This will increase the chances of me being seen on this algorithm, on this platform.
Mhm.
Bada bing, bada boom.
Yeah, I can't tell you how thankful I am for you for actually saying that and being 100% honest. Because although I am in West Palm Beach, I do teach at a school that as soon as I mention, because I'm still on the fence, and I get Trump isn't the best guy, but the more I'm listening to him, the more people I'm seeing him put around. I'm like, this guy's not judging people. He's gonna put someone out there that has a tattoo on her forehead, and he's doing things for common
Yeah.
folk to make it so I can potentially be on that stage one day. And there's this guy that teaches with me. He hates Trump with a passion, but I'm like, I think I might vote for Trump, man. The more I'm listening, the more the people that I have on my show, the more he's helping business owners. I'm like, I think it's almost like my responsibility to my viewers, my community, to
Yeah.
think to do this. And he goes off, so I'm happy again. I can have a conversation without it being so goddamn like fucking ridiculous and getting so heated to the point where yes, I have my
Well
own
said.
opinion. You know what I'm saying? Like I have my own opinion and I want to do what's best for my community, which is again, I'm not that's why I didn't ask you who you were voting for. And I'm not telling anyone that's listening to vote for a certain person. I'm telling you to really look at your community, look at your goals, look at exactly what you want to do and make your decision, not the decision that somebody's making for you, because that's the game that gets played every single day. And if you want to be your own person, if you are a regular consumer of this show, then you do want to be your own person. Make your decision for your morals and your principles and your reasoning, because like you just said, it's about the guy that is at Vietnam and not like look at what hooked you. It had nothing to do with the guy that they're talking shit about. It's the guy that actually went through something and
Mhm.
he's on stage and that touched your heart because some of the things that he went through. And the more I'm getting to know you, I'm realizing, man, the lady who was working at a Waffle House with a single mother and all that, that had to touch your heart. That had to be something that you felt to say, I can do it too. That's the power in it, guys. That's what we got to move through. And before I get on my tangent, I start preaching too much. Can you just tell people a little bit more about your company, what's next, where you see it in the future, who you want to serve, all that good stuff? Feel free to kind of plug away, man.
Undeniably, man. And it's been good to have this conversation. And
Yeah,
5 years ago, it would have been an entirely different conversation.
completely different.
And both of us would have been more reserved politically. Both
Yes,
of us would have been more reserved in what we're saying and beating around the bush. But I believe that there's a pendulum that swings back and forth. And
yes.
society, I think, is moving to the point where if
Waking up,
you
man.
say something like you're going to get knocked in the jaw, like
Yeah,
that's where we're moving back as a country. And I think that's a good thing. Where it's
yes,
like, if I had a disagreement with you, I would much rather fight you physically with a couple fists
yes.
than a gun. Like that's how we should solve this stuff, man.
That's how
And
we
then
should
have a
start.
conversation and be friends afterwards. Like that
Yeah,
is how, and that's what we need more of. And
yeah,
I'm thinking too that look at the politicians that promise you great change and nothing changes. And this is
uh,
predominantly like I'm not a minority, but I was in poverty. But
yeah.
it's like if you think about the African American community, especially, man, how many times does the Democrat come through and be like, "We're going to help you out," and now Joe Biden has a bucket of fried chicken at a black family table? Like,
Yo,
tell me that ain't racist.
I'll send you the video after. I lost it after that. I went to my thumbnail guy. I said, make sure you put this. I could not believe it. I grew up with a black father. That shit pissed me off to the
Yeah,
point
man, you should have just
I
had a
lost it.
watermelon on the table with some Kool-Aid too. Like, go all
Because
in if you're going to do it.
did you watch the video though? The way he was talking to him and the way the dad, like again, I have a black father that was there for me every step of the way. And it was such a trigger that you had the audacity as the father though to make it seem like these boys should be looking up to someone that really doesn't care about them.
Yep.
Oh, why don't you tell them about your basketball? I couldn't take it. I lost it. But again, I am in a situation where again, Trump with the sneakers and all that. So I don't really pay that much attention to it. But again, the more I'm helping where I'm coming from with my community, and then having people like you on the show, it's like you just have an obligation as one. If
I mean,
you know what I'm saying? So good.
let's think about Donald Trump's personal brand, right? One of the arguably the most successful people of her lifetime, and he was not even close to the richest on the Forbes list. At
Mhm.
his height, he was worth $7-8 billion. He was like bottom 20 on the Forbes, top 100. Like
Mhm.
it's not like he was worth $100 billion or some Elon Musk figure, but he was the most known. Everybody knew who he
Everyone
was.
knew who he
And
was.
in the rap community specifically, he was a god, man. Like he was somebody that was idolized. Like Donald Trump
Yeah,
Gold, like, let's mention him in rap songs, Jay-Z, all of this stuff,
yeah,
man,
yeah, I remember.
was association. And then he gets involved with politics, and just because he's Republican or he's running on that ticket, all of a
Yeah.
sudden he's the Antichrist. And it's
Exactly.
kind of crazy to think, man, and you have to go for it. And it's the same person leaving a negative comment. Are you just going off at face value? You're digging a little bit deeper.
That
And
is.
I'm really, it makes me feel good to know that, like, man, if we were to go up on the street, man, and have a conversation, there's no animosity. I think that America is a lot more unified than we have been in quite a long time. And I think that's kind of a crazy thing to think. And it
Yeah.
might take somebody so divisive
Hmm.
in order to unite. And that's cool. Um, man,
Yeah.
but anyways,
The so a book that gets mentioned quite a bit on this show is Rich Dad Poor Dad, because I'm a huge
yeah.
Robert Kiyosaki fan, and he did a book with Donald Trump, the Midas
Mhm.
Touch. And that was another thing that's kind of making me sway, because I love me some Robert Kiyosaki. I love the element of just, hey, going out and make. I hate the excuses. He has it. There you go. Yeah, it's officially shown
Uh,
on the show now. There you go. My
I
guy.
have a few of his books,
Yeah,
so
I
yeah.
love that guy. So anyway, you were talking about your company though.
Yeah, I feel like this has been such a
Mhm.
casual conversation. I mean, my cat's been jumping up and
Yeah.
crawling on my lap and everything. But I feel like it's been a really great conversation, man.
Yes.
So I'm running I was about to say public relations firm, and again, repetition. If I could talk about one thing really quick, and then I'll go into the shameless
Right.
plug and talk about Mashman Consulting Group. But a lot of times people think that they need to have fresh information every single time they're talking.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're going on a podcast, like talk about something new every single time. And I realized that there's this guy. He's not a biohacker per se, but his name is Brian Johnson, and he has a company called The Blueprint. And his main focus is don't die. And so effectively, yeah, it's biohacking. But I've listened to like a dozen of his podcast interviews that he's done in the past 2 years, and he says the same exact thing on every single podcast. It's kind of ridiculous. It's
Mm-hmm.
crazy. And I was thinking about my own business and my own life and my own personal brand and what I'm talking about. And I realized that that repetition is a good thing because not everybody who listens to this show with you is going to listen to another podcast that I'm on or
Yep.
another show, or the people who are following me on social media. They might not catch my reel I did 2 months ago talking about the subject, but now I say it in a different way. It reaches somebody new. And so repetition creates that subconscious programming to where now you're able to do something in second nature. It's taken me some time because I'm like, oh, I'm the founder of Mashman Ventures, a public relations firm. No, I'm the founder of Mashman Consulting Group.
Mm-hmm.
We are a consulting firm out of Little Rock, Arkansas, serving clients internationally, and we work with public figures to optimize and scale their personal brand. Now, what does that look like? That looks like expanding the intellectual property distribution. So, whether that be getting on more platforms, improving the distribution, launching a podcast or improving a podcast,
Mm-hmm.
optimizing their social media, publishing a book, improving the distribution of a book, whatever a public figure who is emerging or established might need help with, we're able to help with.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we come in. And so over the next decade, we'll be expanding the team. I literally just launched MCG in May,
Okay.
and I'm super excited, man. I dissolved my public relations firm because I realized that, again, talking about labels, there was a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of a negative connotation with the public relations industry, and we weren't even doing traditional PR services. It's not like I was pitching for you, it was consulting. And
Right.
so this entire journey that I've been on has been this search for clarity and the search for creating more answers than I am creating questions. And so I
Got
wanted to make sure that people are able to get the answers to any of their potential questions with as much ease as possible. And so we're going to be working with more, people over the next decade,
it. Mm-hmm.
eventually becoming, the number one consulting firm in the world for personal branding, whether that's working with a Fortune 500 executive, the next person who wants to be Alex Hormozy, or
Mm-hmm.
the celebrity basketballer, like whatever it might be. And this is why I take the philosophical approach, because once you realize that your personal brand is you,
Mm-hmm.
you can come to the conclusion and the understanding that the sky's the limit, and you can build something to where you can really be known. And as a friend of mine, Joseph Finity, he's done quite a few things. He's been a television anchor, a few other things. I was talking to him the other day, and he said that Isaac, eventually, you got recognized by somebody walking out of Target the other day, and eventually you're going to go into Target and wish you weren't recognized at all. I think to
Hmm.
myself, it's crazy because that's ultimately where I believe most people might not want to be, but need to be in order to achieve the most success with their life. And that's a heavy burden,
It is.
but I believe it is essential, and we need more leaders who are strong public figures
Right.
talking about the hard issues like you and I are today.
Right. So, given that you said that, what would you say is the best way for someone to get in touch with you? Because you have all these platforms, you're all over. Is it Google? Like, where do you send people in regards to getting in touch with you?
You could go to my website, isaacmashman.com, for my company's mashman.org, or you could just go and follow me on any social media platform at Isaac Mashman. Super easy. You could run a Google search on me and be able to find something that's most convenient for you.
All right, cool. So the way I close out all the shows, Isaac, is just use. I want you to use your imagination a little bit. You are in high school, pulling A's after A's, doing your thing, just grinding. That high school version of you has come in, and you're not going to college. You may, and you just decide you're not going to, but you don't know where that lead is going to be. You're losing relationships. Things are just really sinking for you. Pretend that version of Isaac has come into the Zoom room. Give him some words of encouragement, and we'll officially close you out.
I would tell him to get in front of as many people as possible in a public setting. So, speaking from stage effectively,
Mm-hmm.
get in front of more people, get on other people's podcasts, do public speaking earlier, go to events to where there are multiple people in that room with you. That's what I would tell him because I believe that you could talk and have a bunch of one-on-one interactions, or you could be the person in front of the room having one too many.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I believe that that is a very strategic approach, and
Yeah.
I would tell him to do that a little bit earlier.
Yes. Amen to that. And that, again, I say, Isaac, but that is for all of you listeners as well that do, again, all as thought leaders, what we tell you every day is the stuff that we would have done when we were, that's how we built our entire brands, entire businesses, talking about the stuff that we would have done when we were younger. And again, like I told you at the beginning, what you get on this show, you get people that come here to serve you the best way they know how by being just, I'm not going to use the word authentic, being as vulnerable as they possibly can, so you understand how it can help you and help you grow and things like that. So all that being said, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.